Everyone who has taken Economics 101 knows monopolies are bad. Bad for consumers who pay higher prices, bad for workers who receive lower wages, and bad for governments who want an efficient economy. So it might surprise you to find out that governments create many monopolies through patents and copyright. So why the contradiction? By the end of this video, you'll know why patents and copyright exist, what some of their downsides are, and where the policy debate really happens. If you only think that monopolies are bad, you might be missing some important nuance when designing effective policy solutions. By the way, if this is your first time watching, I'm Seamus. I've spent the past decade working in Canada's public service after studying public policy and economics. I make videos to help you better understand how policies are made and what their impact really is. Now, let's dive into this contradiction. Let me start with a quick 30-second aside on why monopolies are normally considered bad. When one company controls the entire market, it has what we call price-setting power. That means, unlike in a competitive market, where supply and demand determine the price, that one company can decide what the price will be. And, of course, they're going to choose a higher price. It also limits choices for consumers, and can slow down innovation since there's no real motivation to improve. So, customers lose. For workers, sometimes their skills don't transfer easily to another company. So, they have less power to negotiate. Wages end up being lower than if there was competition in the industry, and so workers lose. The winner in a monopoly is, of course, the company itself. Because they can charge higher prices and pay their workers less, their profits are going to be much higher. But when we look at it from the overall economy standpoint, the economy is less efficient. And a less efficient economy means less overall tax revenue for governments. And so governments also lose. So if we tally it up, consumers lose, workers lose, governments lose, but the company itself, the company owners, they win. Now, back to patents and copyright. The most common and pervasive way governments create monopolies is through patents and copyright. These are temporary monopolies granted so that inventors and creators can recoup their investment and be rewarded for their invention or creation. They benefit from that extra profit the company makes as a result of having the monopoly. It's meant as a way to encourage innovation by saying that nobody can immediately copy your idea. As a note on terminology, patents protect inventions and typically last about 20 years, while copyright, also called author's right, protects creative works and typically lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years, so for 70 years after the author dies. Or in the case of something created by a corporation, it typically lasts about 95 years. Obviously, check your local laws, and I'm not a lawyer, because there are a lot of exceptions to the rules and they're not the same everywhere, but they're generally within that range of 20 years for patents and life of the author plus 70 years for copyright. The main international treaty that covers patents is the Paris Convention for the Protection of Industrial Property, and for copyright it is the Berne Convention for the Protection of Literary and Artistic Works, which actually sets a global minimum for copyright of life of the author plus 50 years. Copyright in particular has another motivation behind it, to protect creative control. Copyright gives the author the right to decide how their work is used. Think of Taylor Swift and her fight to control her music. Yes, of course, some of that is about money, but it's also about control over how her music is shared and represented. Without copyright, anyone could use and alter her work in ways that go against her intentions, wishes, and values. So copyright is a way to protect against that. However, even if governments are creating a monopoly for what they consider good reasons, they do come with trade-offs like any other policy. At the end of the day, these are monopolies, and all the consequences of a monopoly apply to patents and copyright. First, they make products more expensive. The latest iPhone is more expensive in part because nobody other than Apple can make and sell it. Secondly, they limit customer options. Copyright is one reason there hasn't been a Silmarillion movie, much to my disappointment. Third, they lower wages. Pharmacists, lab technicians, and production workers that specialize in making one specific patented drug have only one potential employer and thus lower wages. And fourth, tax revenue decreases. A monopoly ultimately limits the overall economic output and thus lowers government tax revenue. The one area I want to dive into in a bit more detail is whether patents lead to more or less innovation. On the one hand, they lead to a monopoly, which allows for higher profits for inventors and creators, which suggests that they should lead to more innovation. But on the other hand, once the patent or copyright is granted, the monopoly holder has less incentive to innovate because they aren't facing any competition. A good counterexample to copyright protection for creative works is meme culture, where memes are constantly able to build on each other. If memes were copyrighted, once a picture was used for one meme, it wouldn't be able to be used again for several decades. I think most people would consider that a loss. Now, of course, writing Lord of the Rings takes a lot more work, and Taylor Swift songs mean a lot more to her personally than most memes do to their creators. But even so, these monopolies have likely kept us from being great creations that would build off their work. The same is true for inventions. Patents can slow down the pace of advancement because people are unable to iterate on other people's inventions. Now, if you're asking me to tell you which of these effects is bigger, the extra profit being a motivation or the lack of competition being a unmotivating factor, well, I can't answer that. It is one of the biggest ongoing debates that goes back to some of the giants of economics like Joseph Schumpeter in favor of patents and Kenneth Arrow, who was opposed. The real answer lies probably somewhere in between. But it is going to be different for different products, in different industries, and probably different at different times. Today, many economists spend their days trying to find the optimal patent length, long enough to encourage initial innovation, but short enough to avoid slowing down overall progress. So what are the key takeaways? Well, patents and copyright are tools governments use to encourage innovation and protect creators, but they do come with costs. They make products more expensive, limit consumer options, affect wages, and can even slow the pace of technological or creative process. And so the debate isn't really about whether they're good or bad, it's about finding the right balance, giving creators enough incentive to innovate or create without holding back everyone else and unnecessarily hurting consumers, workers, and the government. And while that balance isn't going to be the same for every industry, every product, or every era, let me know down in the comments if you think 20 years for patents and life of the author plus 70 years are good benchmarks for patents and copyright. And so the next time you see a new iPhone, a new blockbuster movie, or a hit song, remember the monopoly behind it isn't just about profits, it's a carefully designed policy choice. That's it from me today. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.